Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name's Nathan Harvey. It is great to have you here on a Tuesday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How are you doing today on this very special Tuesday for you? Celtics won the NBA Finals in 5 games. You picked them in 7. It's been a very, very long time. I think it's been 16 years since they won their last title. They officially become the #1 team in success when it comes to winning championships in NBA history. 18 for them, 17 for the Lakers. They break that tie, which is indeed the first topic of today's show. So let's jump right into it. So the Boston Celtics won their record-breaking 18th NBA championship and the first since 2008. Ironically, on the same day they won it back in 2008 as well. So it's definitely memorable. They won 106-88 in Game 5 against the Dallas Mavericks. Now Boston has one more title than any other team in the NBA, which is the Lakers with 17. They have more than anyone else. Jason Tatum, 31 points, 11 assists, 8 rebounds. Jaylen Brown, 21 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. And Jaylen Brown was named NBA Finals MVP. I want to know, you picked this team to win. I want to know, how impressed were you with the Celtics' performance last night?
The theme of my commentary tonight is anything worth having is worth waiting for. The Celtics have waited 16 years since their last championship. It was worth waiting for. Very exciting. The fans were going nuts. Celtics have some of the best fans in the in the world. I happen to be one of them. And they were ecstatic, and rightfully so. It's anything worth having is worth waiting for. Just ask Al Horford. He waited 17 years for his first championship. He got it last night. And the classy Joe Mazzulla had him the first to come off the court near the end when they were up so far that it was obvious Dallas wasn't going to catch him, and the game was in hand. He was the first one off the court, got a massive standing ovation. His dad in the stands. Couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier for Al Horford. He's had a long career, a very distinguished career, done very well over the years. Never lucky enough to get a championship. He finally got it last night. I bet you he'll be back next year.
He is. He's expected to be back next year.
Anything worth having is worth waiting for. Just ask Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. They played together for 7 years now. First time they've had a championship. Made it 2 years ago. Lost to the Warriors. Very disappointing. Looked like they were going to be able to win that championship with the way they started out. Wound up getting beat by Steph Curry. So they learned a lot from that. And they didn't make it last year, but collapsing to the Heat in the last game there after they got down 3-0, came back to tie it 3-3, but couldn't get it done in the 7th game at home, which was very surprising and very disappointing for everyone. This year, I would say another point, anything worth having, worth waiting for, is Brad Stevens. He's been with the team as the coach. Had a lot of success winning, but never getting to the didn't get to the championship game. Always got to the conference finals, but never was able to punch his ticket to the championship. Was kicked upstairs to be the GM. realized that too much pressure on Jason Tatum in a really tight game down the stretch doesn't work. Tatum doesn't generally come through that way. He's good during the regular game, leading up to the end, with really balanced scoring, a balanced performance with assists and rebounds and scoring. It generally had triple doubles here or close to it in many of these games. But when a game is on the line and it's really close, the Celtics down the stretch have never been that good, and he's part of the reason. And I think they finally recognized that. They decided it's got to be a more balanced attack. We got to go out and get some support for him beyond just Jaylen Brown. And they did it. They brought in Drew Holiday. They have Derek White. They have Kristaps Porzingis. And they have Al Horford. And but between them, all of those players and some people coming off the bench as well. Hauser, able to come in and hit threes. The point guard, number 11. Peyton Pritchard. Didn't have a really great final series, but is a really good ball handler and distributor. Can hit the three occasionally. Having that depth and having that talent across all the players and playing a team concept led by Mazzulla was the winning formula. And one last thing I'll say before I turn it over to you, and I'll have more to say in a few minutes. I want to throw out a big thank you to the Minnesota Timberwolves for knocking off the Nuggets, because if it had been the Nuggets against the Celtics, I'm not so sure. I'm pretty sure it would have definitely gone 7, and I at least 7. And I not so sure the Celtics would have won that because they lost both games to the Nuggets during the year.
Yeah.
And I just think the Nuggets ran up. They had a bad streak there. For whatever reason, they couldn't knock off the Timberwolves, who played poorly against Dallas. So Dallas was never – it was pretty clear they weren't going to knock off the Celtics. After the first game, you could tell that. So
yeah,
I'd like to hear what you have to say about it, but I just say thank you, Celtics. Very happy. I've been alive for all 18 championships. I was a big Celtics fan when I was really young, watching Bill Russell play with that cast around him, which was exceptional then, and then the Larry Bird era, and now the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and supporting cast era. It's great. Hopefully Jason Tatum, who's only 27 years old, 26 years old, and has been in the league 7 years. Michael Jordan didn't win his first championship till he was, 28?
27. KD was 28. LeBron was 27.
Yeah. So, these guys could go on a run. They could go on a run. I hope they can hold this team together. I'm sure Tatum's going to get a max contract over the summer. Jaylen Brown definitely earned his money. He wound up the MVP of both the conference title and the finals title. So, go Celtics. Couldn't be happier.
Well, I'm going to give you your flowers because you were spot on with your pick. You picked the Celtics. You were riding them the entire season. And while I thought that a lot of people would say, will not give the Celtics the right praise because we all expected this with the roster construction of Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, we kind of expected this. But it turns out that, rightfully so, the Celtics are getting the right praise they deserve. Now, it's unfair to immediately, but this is the way sports media is, immediately compare them to the greatest NBA Finals winning teams in NBA history. Is Joe Mazzulla one of the best coaches now? A bunch of this comparison. How about we just live in the moment and enjoy it? Because this was spectacular. We finally had a Jason Tatum game where Jason Tatum was absolutely spectacular through most, if not all, of this game. And it seems like towards the second half, him and Jaylen Brown were kind of going, piece for piece, tit for tat, where it comes to who's going to be the NBA Finals MVP. Turns out it's Jaylen Brown, because Jaylen Brown was the best player in the NBA Finals, and he was the best player, like you mentioned, in the Eastern Conference Finals, winning the Larry Bird MVP trophy. So the Celtics did something incredible. They were the best team in the NBA, which hasn't been done, and won the NBA Finals, which hasn't been done since, I believe, the 16-17 Warriors. Drew Holiday is an incredible piece, and that's actually one of the key pieces that they added. Kristaps Porzingis, big man, could shoot threes, is great defensively. We saw in this series and in the series prior in this series alone, defensively. Game 1, he comes back from his injury after being down almost a month. Actually, a little over a month, 38 days, I believe. He comes back and it's like block, rebound. 10 points in the first quarter, 11 points in the first quarter, 8 points. He was going off. He was absolutely incredible. So Porzingis' impact in this series, which what I was fearing that the Celtics wouldn't have in the 2 prior series when he was out. Turns out it wasn't the case. Pacers couldn't stop him offensively. They had no defense. The Celtics had to go up against a Cavs team that already wasn't that good, had trouble against the Magic, who were a fine team, but still not one of the upper echelon teams of the NBA. And then they eventually lost Donovan Mitchell in the last 2. So the Celtics did something incredible. When they needed players to make big plays, they did. In this game, Derek White, 4 of 8 from 3. Chip Tooth had a beautiful block on Derek Lively that was incredible. Peyton Pritchard, the second half-court buzzer beater 3 to end the half. I think that's the first time in NBA Finals history of 2 buzzer beater 3s in the same series. So he played, a minute and 25 seconds, I believe. And he still had a massive impact, crushing the soul. And what's funny is that you could throw game 4 away. Throw it away. Didn't really matter because as soon as you went back to TD Garden in Boston, the halftime lead was 67-46. This was not a game. In the first quarter, you could tell. The Celtics were clearly the better team. They wanted it more. And I think, honestly, Luka Doncic was probably tired because he carried that team in large parts, and especially in the playoffs when he needed to. Kyrie Irving especially did not step up, which he hasn't been able to do in large parts in the last 13, 14 games against the Celtics. He has won one game, I believe. He's won a singular game in the past 13 or 14. And he doesn't play very well. In this game, he had 15 points, 3 of 9 from 3, 5 of 16, from the floor. So I'm going to give you your flowers. The Celtics played incredible all season. I think they silenced a lot of doubters because they thought that Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, one of them needed to go. We heard about who are they going to trade. They should trade somebody. They're not going to win with this unit. And especially after they lost to the Warriors in the way they did. Jaylen Brown has no left hand. Jason Tatum, triple-digit turnovers in the playoffs during that finals run. We heard everything in the book. And this team played phenomenal. I think the regular season does matter because it builds rapport, it builds chemistry, it builds schematics, which Joe Mazzulla, being as young as he is, which he's the youngest coach to win an NBA Finals since Bill Russell back in '69, I think trying very hard in the regular season, I think it does translate to the play. So the Celtics did exactly what they were supposed to do and did it honestly. The finals were a little bit surprising to a lot of people, I think, because a lot of people picked the Mavs, including myself, because we thought the high-flying offense of Doncic and Kyrie, Derek Lively, Gafford, PJ Washington being a perfectly fine 3-piece, but the Celtics just showed that they are an entirely different level of NBA play. When it comes to a team that, yes, Luka was a little bit banged up, still is out there. It's the same thing. If you're good enough to play out there, I'm going to assess you as if you really weren't hurt because you decided to play. If you're a detriment to the team, I'm going to say that. I'm not going to excuse you.
Yeah. Well, I would say the Celtics had the team that many thought could win the championship. They showed during the regular season they were the best team in the NBA. 62 wins, I believe. It's a great season, and it would have been a failure. The season would have been considered a failure. 64 wins.
Yeah,
the season would have been considered a failure if they hadn't won the championship. Is my opinion.
Yeah, big time.
You know? And you look at some of the stats in the game. I mean, they just dominated the boards, 51-35. They dominated in assists, 25-18. The Mavs had a ton of turnovers, 13. And so I think that you talked about Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum being able to play together to win it, that tandem that can win the championship. They proved they could do it. There was a piece that had to go. It turned out to be Marcus Smart, who was replaced by Drew Holiday.
Which is an upgrade.
That turned out to be a brilliant move, right? Drew Holiday, despite being a little bit older, doesn't show it at all.
And has a 3-year extension,
has a 3-year extension to go
34.
with it. So I think Brad Stevens deserves a lot of credit for recognizing what the weaknesses were of the team, what the psyche was of the key player, Jason Tatum, what he could do to support the team and turn it into more of a team concept, bringing in some assistant coaches to help Joe Mazzulla more with more experience. It all worked out.
Absolutely.
And they got to be extremely happy and feeling good about the future as well.
I'll say this, though. It's really unfortunate for Marcus Smart, who always thought he'd remain a Celtic. He ended up getting hurt. Robert Williams, great defensive piece for him, ended up getting hurt. Malcolm Brogdon shot 42% from three. He ended up getting hurt. Grant Williams just wasn't good. Every piece that they moved off of last season turned out to be the right move, because what you brought in was you brought in better players. I think it was fewer players because you lost a bunch of them. You brought in fewer players that made a bigger impact.
Yeah.
Now that is how you run a team. That's how you build up a unit. You bring in very few players. You get rid of what you think is a lot of decent to bad pieces, and you bring in a couple good ones, and they make a bigger impact than all those players combined. That's what Porzingis and Drew Holiday did.
Yeah.
Porzingis is a 20-a-night scorer who plays very good defensively. Drew Holiday is arguably the best defensive point guard in a very long time. And guess what? The first year on two teams, he's able to actually win the NBA Finals, which I believe is the first time in NBA history for him to do that as well. Derek White, three-point. I think he's a pretty good three-point fiasco, and definitely one of the best defensive guards in the NBA. Him and Drew Holiday both made defensive second team. So if we're talking about defensive backcourt, the Celtics have the best. We talk about I would say, a nice thunder and lightning punch. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are probably top three in the NBA.
And center-wise, you got to put Porzingis up there in the top echelon too. The way he played all year and the stats he had for the Celtics. He has an injury issue problem, and he was injured for these playoffs. He did get in there last night, but not for very long. Scored a few points, and the Celtics were able to get it done with all the depth they have, even with him hurt most of the time. They only lost 2 games in the whole playoff series. They had several gentlemen sweeps there. I think you called Dallas Celtics a gentleman sweep, right?
Yeah, gentleman sweep. Yeah, 5 games.
The second game in Dallas, the Celtics didn't really. Yeah, you could tell
they got crushed.
They got crushed. So they came back and showed that they're just the dominant team.
And the big part about it is they are plus 280 favorites, and it's a long shot. I think it's plus 280 to 700, which is, I believe, the Denver Nuggets. Yeah, next year.
Yeah, next year, Denver Celtics.
Yeah, you're already making it's
Nuggets
June 18th.
Celtics. It's the finals for next year, and that will be a nail biter.
Well, here's the thing: all the key players from Boston, Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, Holiday, White, Horford, and Pritchard, all signed through next year. Every single one of them. And then Hauser has a team option for this upcoming season, which the Celtics will probably, accept. The big one is, though, for the first time in history, you can now negotiate for players that are not becoming free agents. Actually, with your own free agent, you could start negotiating today. So it's a day after the finals. You could immediately start negotiating with your own free agents. So players who won't be a free agent could become eligible to sign extensions on July 6th. Which means that Jason Tatum can sign a 6-year, $315 million supermax extension in a couple weeks from now?
I'm sure that's going to happen. I can't wait for that to happen.
It's going to be insane to see. But the big part about it is the Celtics, they're not changing. All the key players are coming back. All are signed. Jason Tatum does have 2 years left.
They won over 80
deal.
games this year, all for the whole season.
Yeah. No,
with the 16 wins in the playoff round, only 2 losses, 16-2. Come on.
Hey, it's impressive. Celtics are your 2023-2024 NBA title champs. Let's get into our next topic here. We're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders today because it's quite interesting. Sean Reed of The Athletic said the Raiders have a concerning situation at quarterback following Getsy's system. He says, both Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew struggled during OTAs. They split snaps with the first string fairly evenly, but neither found much success during the practices that were open to reporters. The quarterbacks and the rest of the offense are still in the early stages of getting comfortable in coordinator Luke Getsy's offense. It's troubling that neither O'Connell nor Minshew displayed much progress results-wise by the end of OTAs. Both quarterbacks struggled to push the ball downfield, had too many off-target throws, and frequently put the ball in harm's way. Now, what's funny is that, reportedly, Alec Pierce, the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, wanted to draft a quarterback in this previous draft. But it looks like Tom Telesco was so happy with Gardner Minshew that he said, you know what, we're going to go with tight end. So they drafted Brock Bowers at number 13, I believe. So it looks like already from the get-go, Alec Pierce, as well as former Chargers GM and now Raiders GM Tom Telesco, already at wit's end, and the quarterback is probably the most important position, and they disagreed on the direction of how they're going to decide between Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, or draft a rookie quarterback, so it's not looking good, and immediately out of Luke Getsy's offense, there's problems. So I want to know, do you think the Raiders should be concerned the fact that both their quarterbacks on their roster are struggling in a pretty complicated scheme that Luke Getsy brings?
I think it's a little early to get too upset. I mean, it is a brand new system for both quarterbacks. And they did struggle, but part of that struggle related to the defense. I understand that Max Crosby and Wilkins were creating all kinds of havoc there, disrupting the rhythm of the quarterbacks, and I think that had a bearing on it. I do also understand that Pierce early this season said he's going to emphasize relationships over X's and O's. Well, maybe he wants to change that philosophy, as the X's and O's for the quarterbacks didn't work out so well in the OTAs. That's something you got to look at. You look at O'Connell. He's a second-year player. He has Minshew there to give him competition. He was 5-4 as a starter last year. The last 4 games, he did quite well, 8 TDs, no interceptions. But he doesn't take many chances often enough to elevate the offense, and I think that's something that the Raiders are worried about. You look at the Raiders' defense, it's pretty strong, the 9th fewest points in the league last year. But the offense scored less than 17 points in 10 of 17 games. So I think I like Gardner Minshew. I like watching him play. I mean, he's not the physically gifted guy. I mean, he's not that big. He's maybe not all that fast. Maybe he doesn't have the rocket arm, but he's a real competitor. He played very well for the Colts last year when he stepped in after Richardson got hurt. And I think he'll give O'Connell a run for his money. I think what they're hoping is one of these quarterbacks will step forward early enough so that they don't have to get into the regular season to try to make a decision about who's really going to be the starter for the long haul. It really didn't happen in these OTAs, that's for sure. They both struggled to deliver accurate throws and rhythm, and they held the ball too long on too many dropbacks, so that's an issue. But as I mentioned, the defense wreaked havoc on them. They didn't have much time to throw, and Colton Miller, who was the best offensive line guy, didn't even participate. So there was some progress from O'Connell, maybe near the end there. He had a couple of big-time deep throws that were pretty good. But this is something that we'll continue to watch and see what happens when they get into the preseason.
I think when it comes to the fact that your decision is between Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell to be your franchise guy for at least now, yeah, I do think you should be worried, and especially because your offensive coordinator is an offensive coordinator that isn't a very good one. He makes this when he was with Chicago, it was a very complicated system. Cole Kmet said that Getsy threw a lot at the offense. He threw a lot at the receivers. Receivers had trouble learning routes. Justin Fields. We always remember Justin Fields said in one of the early press conferences last season that he had to think too long during a play. Well, that's kind of a problem. Young quarterbacks, you're throwing way too much at them, not letting them get comfortable, not letting them become, fitted for an offense in the NFL. You're doing way too much too early. That's a problem. Now, Gardner Minshew, that's where I think, honestly, he has the he has the advantage because he's been in the NFL. He's seen a bunch of systems. I believe this is his 4th team in his career. So he's seen a lot. He's been in a bunch of offenses, so maybe he could get a little bit of the edge when it comes to whether or not it's Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew. But those two quarterbacks just at the flatline level are not good quarterbacks. Your roster is not that great. Your offensive line is not very good. So if your offensive line's not very good, behind a quarterback that isn't very good to begin with, well, yeah, I understand you have a lot of nice pieces, which include Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Michael Gallup. Now you have Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer from last year. Doesn't matter because it's still the quarterback throwing the ball. Because we saw Jimmy G, the Raiders were not good with Jimmy Garoppolo as starting quarterback. He threw way too many interceptions. He held onto the ball for too long. He took a bunch of sacks. He was flat out not a good quarterback. So as you always say that, notoriously, quarterback holds on to the ball every play. Well, if the quarterback is Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, I think that's a problem because they're not good quarterbacks. Gardner Minshew is probably one of the most underrated backup quarterbacks, and I think he kind of got snubbed at parts of his career, especially in Jacksonville. But we saw him last year for a couple games.
I thought he played well last year.
Or was it 2 years ago? He was in for...
They were in playoff contention.
No, last year, Colts, I was talking about the
Yeah.
Eagles as well. Yeah, no. They were a couple games away, I believe, from playoff contention, but still. Gardner Minshew is not a quarterback that's going to make or break a team. He'll mostly break it. Aiden O'Connell, yes, you're right. His career, his record last season was 5-5. It was 5-5 because I think, he started 10 games. It was 5-5, 6.
5-4 as a starter.
Okay, so but let's take a look at this though. Only 200 yards per game.
As I said, he does not take many chances, but he didn't turn the ball over much either. He had 8 TDs in the last 4 games and no interceptions.
Last 4 games though. Let's break out the entire season though. 12 touchdowns to 7 picks, 62% completion percentage. I got a problem with that. He had a passer rating of 83.9.
He played half the year.
Well, a little bit.
And he's a rookie.
A little bit more than half. He was a rookie. I will give you that. He was a rookie. So, I don't think. So, let's just say, slightly above a winning record, about 500, we'll call it. Guess what? They went 8-9. 8-9 is not bad for this kind of a team. I just think it doesn't matter what your team looks like. Because Davante Adams, he's Davante. And I'll give them credit with this. Screw the offense. The defense got upgraded this year. The defensive unit added Christian Wilkins this offseason.
Yeah.
That's a pretty nice piece to add. Max Crosby's already incredible. So you have him paired up with Christian Wilkins, and not only that, you bring back Jack Jones, who had his moment in the sun in New England, had a couple nice plays, had a couple nice plays with the Raiders.
Yeah, two TD interceptions for TDs.
He picked off Mahomes for a touchdown as well. In that weird game where O'Connell threw very, very few amount of passes, and they still were able to get the win. So, I think with a complicated system, your OC is Luke Getsy, who already, Chicago fans know firsthand, overcomplicates things and make things way too difficult and throws so much at him so early. That could complicate stuff. I think there'll be a lot of confusion, and especially, I understand, Davante Adams is a veteran, and so is Jacoby Myers. But I think if you throw so much at him so early, it'll get confusing. And especially the fact you have a young quarterback who I think Alec Pierce actually likes a lot because he said very early this offseason he wants to keep O'Connell and have him compete for the starting job, whatever they do at the quarterback situation, whether or not they bring in a veteran or they draft a rookie. He wants Aiden O'Connell to compete. I think it's a missed opportunity. Now, circumstance-wise, I could understand why Tom Telesco did what he did. Because at that time, every single quarterback was gone. The top 6 quarterbacks in the draft were gone by the time they got to the Raiders.
Yeah, I think they made the right move, too. Who would they have drafted for quarterback?
It would have been Jordan Travis or Spencer Rattler. It would have been, a tier 2, tier 3 quarterback.
They might have taken the Florida State quarterback, right?
Jordan Travis, who went nearly dead last to the Jets.
But that's because he hurt himself. He may.
So
if he
you're
recovers
saying that
from
there's a lot of upside to
upside for him.
Fair. I'm not going to hate on that. But I think it's just, yes, circumstance-wise, this was the right decision because you would have needed to way overdraft a quarterback. A quarterback didn't go for a number of rounds after that first round.
Yeah.
So you would have needed to way overdraft your next quarterback if you wanted to draft one. Or you could have tried to move up, which reportedly
they did look at that.
The Raiders tried to do to get Michael Penix. Then the Falcons shocked the world by drafting him at number 8 down 3 years down the road, which is still a question.
Well, if the Falcons hadn't drafted him, they may have fallen. There may have been a good quarterback, either Nix or Penix, fall to number 13. And probably would have taken him.
Well, Penix, in a bunch of mock drafts, was already campaigning to go at number 13, Nix going 12. And then the Falcons decided, you know what, let me shock everybody by drafting Penix. Which is, that's aggressive. That
to me was the weirdest pick.
It was the weirdest pick, correct.
And I think it makes no sense to me. I don't know why they did that. It was a bunch of egos. I don't think it had anything to do with making the best, smartest pick.
Well, it's down the road, which is interesting.
Down the road about 5 years from now.
Right. When you sign a guy $45 million a year for a couple years, it's a little bit of a weird situation to do it that early. when you could have done it this year or this upcoming season. You could have done the following season, get Arch Manning maybe defending.
I think it also pissed off
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I mean, his family's from that area, his wife. They moved back there, a big fanfare. He gets a huge contract, and then they call him 10 minutes before the draft pick and tell him they're picking a quarterback. That's ridiculous. I didn't understand that at all.
They did not tell him until the pick was in that they were going to draft Penix.
It's ridiculous.
It's an unfortunate situation for Cousins.
It's a big ego thing.
But no, I think that, because of the fact that you have a young quarterback who the head coach really likes, you have a quarterback that the GM really likes that's not the same quarterback. Yes, obviously there'll be competition. But if it was competition against two really good quarterbacks, really promising or a very promising rookie with a decent veteran, I could see that. No, this is like a bottom 20 quarterback versus another bottom 20 quarterback. So no matter what, it's bad. It's not great against not great. The product is not great.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I think O'Connell is very young. He showed some promise last year. Whether he can step up and take more chances, elevate the offense, remains to be seen. He has some competition that he has to be worried about, and Gardner Minshew, who's good enough to be able to start and has proven that in the past. So we'll watch it closely and see what happens.
Fortunately, though, one being the easiest, 32 being the hardest, I don't think it'll really matter. The Raiders have the 24th easiest schedule in the NFL. So I think no matter what, it's going to be very, very difficult because right now, you look at the schedule very briefly, you're playing the chart. You open your first 4 games, 3 of which being pretty difficult. The Chargers, Baltimore, Carolina, and Cleveland.
Carolina.
That's what I said. 3 out of the 4 is not great. Then mid-season, you go Rams, Chiefs, Bengals, Dolphins.
Wow.
Then take a little break in Denver, depending on how Bo Nix looks. That could be a challenge. Then it's Kansas City, Tampa. Then you visit the you bring in the Falcons, Jacksonville, New Orleans, depending on how Derek Carr looks, and then you end the year with the Chargers. That's a pretty difficult schedule.
They're in a tough division.
They are. The AFC West is one of the toughest. Yeah. I think
they have the Super Bowl winner there.
Exactly. The going on, hopefully back-to-back Super Bowl winner. But I think just because the AFC West did not look good last year because the Raiders were supposed to be a little bit better because you went from, Derek Carr to Jarrett Stidham to then you got Jimmy Garoppolo because of Josh McDaniels, and that turned out not to be a good idea. And then you also got Justin Herbert, who everyone expected them to do decently well because it's Justin Herbert. Instead, they went 5-12, and then Justin Herbert ended up getting hurt. Brandon Staley's defense was terrible. On paper, it's great, but as usual, when it comes to Brandon Staley, production-wise, not good. You had Jim Harbaugh. That should improve it right there. Now, I don't think the wide receiver pieces were a great idea. Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, those are your 2 top guys. Don't love that, but I think with an upgraded head coach, should be an improved team. The Broncos. Russell Wilson playing it safe. Horrible season year 1 with them. Year 2, production was a little bit... production was good, but he was playing it very safe, not taking a lot of risks. If Bo Nix is as good as Sean Payton is hyping him up to be, they should be a decent team hovering around 500. That's year 1 with that rookie. So I think the AFC West will go back to being one of the hardest divisions, if not the hardest division in the NFL. I'd still give the edge to the AFC North, though. Bengals, Ravens, Browns, Steelers. But I think the AFC West is right there. Right there.
I don't think the Raiders will be great this year.
Neither do I. I'm probably looking at 7-10.
Yeah.
Maybe max 7-10 because you play Pittsburgh in there, who I don't think Pittsburgh's going to be very good. New Orleans you play in there. Carolina's there. Denver, depending on how they look. Can the Rams have a half-decent defense without Aaron Donald?
Didn't they beat the Chiefs once last year?
They did. And now that was the weird game with Jack Jones pick 6, and then I think on the previous play or the following drive, Mahomes fumbled the ball. It was a mess in that game. Aiden O'Connell threw it, I think, 10 times. It was a strange game, but I do think that the Raiders, no matter what quarterback you go with, this is an ugly situation because both quarterbacks are not that great. And O'Connell showed promise, like you mentioned. Last 4 games, was it 8 touchdowns, no picks?
Yeah.
Promise. Still bottom
Maybe
20.
Smart. He's a smart player.
Still bottom 20, though. I need to see growth, and with the overcomplicated system that Getsy brings, could cause some conflict.
Maybe
there.
he'll have to simplify it a little bit.
You would hope so. All right, we're going to take a break, but coming up, Mike Garafolo, NFL Network insider, says that the Giants want to keep the coaching staff and the regime around for quite some time. But does Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen deserve to be on the hot seat if they have another failure of a season, as well as Dak Prescott asking for $60 million? We'll talk about that right after the break.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the comment.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name's Stephen Harvey. It is great to have you on a Tuesday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic. So, NFL Network insider Mike Garafolo spoke recently about the Giants coaching staff and what the Giants expect from their coaching staff when it comes to GM Joe Schoen as well as head coach Brian Daboll. Take a listen to what Mike Garafolo had to say.
We all thought year one with this regime, it's like, okay, now they've got things and they're moving in the right direction. And certainly after a couple of quick triggers at the coaching position, they want to stick with this regime. They don't want it to be a 3-and-done type situation. They've had some 2-and-done situations. So they want to be able to have a coaching staff around and the regime around for quite some time.
So I want to know, do you think other GM Joe Schoen and or Brian Daboll deserve to be on the hot seat at the beginning of the 2024-2025 NFL season?
Yes, they both deserve to be on the hot seat. They had a horrible season last year. Daniel Jones was hurt, but maybe that didn't make that much difference. The offensive line was horrible. They had no real weapons for the quarterback to throw to like they had the year before. So I think that, and they lost their defensive coordinator because they couldn't get along with he and Daboll didn't get along very well. Daboll's a madman demeanor on the sidelines is a little crazy. I don't get that. I think that's the wrong way to lead out there. And now he's going to be calling the plays next year. I look for the Giants. We talked about this. I don't think the Giants will do well at all this year. They lost Saquon Barkley. That was and they lost him to the Philadelphia Eagles. You're gonna have to play him twice a year. The guy's gonna be pumped to come back and beat you up, and he's got the talent to do it. So I recognize that the Giants have a lot of young players. I think that the leadership there, the owners have said, they will be patient with Daboll and Schoen. I would say the history is they're more patient with the GMs than they are with the coaches. They stuck with Dave Gettleman for 4 years. He wound up with a 19-46 record, which was, in turn, the team was a mess when he left. He lasted 4 years. On the coaching side, if I were Brian Daboll, I'd be worried. No matter what's being said, ask Ben McAdoo, Pat Schumer, and Joe Judge how they fared in New York. None of them lasted very long, and that could pan out this year, particularly with Bill Belichick in the wings, looking for a job, mentioning that the Giants would be one that he'd be interested in. Had 2 Super Bowl wins with the Giants as their defensive coordinator. The Giants were an elite team then. having him out there in the available to be hired. If the Giants get off to a horrible start, and they're 4-8 in December, I think watch out. I would say at least Daboll will be heading for the exit.
So, I have been very critical of Daniel Jones. I think rightfully so. You give a quarterback that has one okay year after having a bunch of horrible years, a $40 million a year contract, only 2 years later to realize how much of a massive mistake that was. And everybody's saying they're going to get off him after 2 years, which I think is definitely the right move to make. And I think that falls kind of on the previous general manager. It's not Joe Shane's fault. Hell, I think Joe Shane's making a couple nice moves. John Michael Schmitz, the center, did a fine job. Now, you also added this offseason Illuminor, who should be okay, although I don't think he's going to be great, as well as you added John Runyon from the Packers, should be an okay move. And not only that, you got a very, very nice rookie wide receiver in Malik Neighbors instead of going with J.J. McCarthy or another quarterback or any other position piece. So let's take a look at the Giants' offensive weapons, because I think Brian Daboll is doing the best. I'll start with him. I don't think he deserves to be on the hot seat whatsoever because he's doing the best with what he's got. This is their offense heading into, or this is their offensive, it should be offensive weapons heading into 2024. Daniel Jones, Devin Singletary, Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, Daniel Bellinger, and Theo Johnson. Devin Singletary is supposedly the replacement for Saquon. It's not a replacement. He is not that great of a running back. He did okay with Houston, and he was okay with the Bills. Nothing spectacular. His best year, hands down, was a couple years ago in 2021. He had 870 yards and 7 touchdowns. And actually, no, excuse me, last year was his best year, 898 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's an okay running back, but is he Saquon Barkley? No, he's not. So you downgrade. It's not that big of a downgrade, but you did downgrade. Malik Neighbors being your wide receiver 1. Yeah, no, that's hands down. Malik Neighbors is a tremendous receiver. A lot of people argued towards the very, very end whether or not Malik Neighbors should go first instead of Marvin Harrison, which Marvin Harrison obviously ended up going first ahead of Neighbors. Darius Slayton, okay, not that great. Wan'Dale Robinson, he has a couple nice highlights out there that I've seen that one of my friends, who should remain nameless, he's played for me a couple of times. Yeah, they're nice. He makes a nice cut 3 yards in and runs. He's a great yards after the catch guy. I'll give him that credit. You lost Darren Waller, though. As expected, Waller did retire from the NFL. Now Daniel Bellinger is your tight end 1. That's not that great. And Theo Johnson, rookie. We'll have to wait and see. I'm sure he'll be okay, but because of the Giants, I'm not too sure. Now let's go to the proper offensive line. This offensive line is right from the get-go, it looks a little bit better than last year. However, I don't think it will be that much better. So let's begin. Left tackle Andrew Thomas, one of the best left tackles in the NFL, one of the best tackles in the NFL. Now, Jermaine Illuminor, I think is an upgrade. Absolutely an upgrade. However, he's not that great, and especially when it comes to something that the Giants need, which is pass blocking. By the way, the Giants led the NFL in sacks given up. 85 sacks. They had 3 guys, I believe, in the top 10 for most sack quarterback last year. That's a problem. Illuminor, 48 out of 81 pass block grade. So he's about half. Not that great. It's actually a little bit below half. Then John Runyon, right guard. John Michael Schmitz, I think, is a perfectly fine center. Growing, very young guy. He's been okay. Runyon, a nice piece to add. An upgrade definitely because the Giants had the 30th ranked offensive line last year. However, he's a 47 out of 79 rated guard. Not that great. Not that great at all. And then Evan Neal starting at right tackle is a problem. Evan Neal, we've mentioned on the show, and if we're doing another sport, Luka Doncic being a traffic cone, that's Evan Neal. He has literally, we've seen clips of this online, he has decided to pass block and run block his own offensive lineman. That's very embarrassing for a guy, and he's starting as your right tackle. He's not a good right tackle. If you're going to keep him on the starting rotation, the starting offensive line, move him inside so he could have some support from his center and from his right tackle if needed. You leave him alone on an island, I guarantee you, Micah Parsons or whoever will line up against him and beat the hell out of him because he is essentially a traffic cone. So I think Brian Daboll is doing the best with what he's got. Joe Schoen has had a couple nice drafts. I'm not saying that they're home runs, a couple nice ones. But the downfall is actually what Alec Pierce was afraid of, which got Arthur Smith fired, I think will ultimately end up getting Brian Daboll fired. Unless you can convince John Mara that if I didn't have Daniel Jones, I'd be fine. This team would be fine. And that's the big X factor. Your quarterback is Daniel Jones. And that's where I think if he has another bad year, there is a high likelihood, I agree, that at least Brian Daboll will be fired because you have a horrible quarterback starting. And bad quarterbacks get coaches fired. Desmond Ridder did it to Arthur Smith, who I think is actually could be a good thing because Arthur Smith actually fits in with the quarterbacks that the Steelers currently have. So I think it's unfortunate that Daboll may suffer because of bad quarterback play. But I think if Shane and Daboll can convince Mara that let me have one more rookie quarterback, and if he's not good and we miss on it, and the team just is terrible through and through, I think that's when you could be like, okay, fine, we'll let you have one more year, rookie quarterback, see how he develops. Otherwise, you're out of here. That also if Daniel Jones is healthy, which a lot of people say he probably won't be, he's very injury prone. That could also kill your season. Because you're letting a quarterback they're paying $40 million for. You're going to have to pay him $30+ million more because he has that injury guarantee. Which is, again, bad contract structure. He had one okay season of 15 passing touchdowns and 5 picks. Yes, it's a little bit better, but still not all that great.
Well, in the Giants' defense, I will say they did say Shane told the management when he came on and picked up a team that was a mess and managed to get to the playoffs and win one game was unexpected, and I don't think he thought that meant that everything was fixed. They still had work to do. He told the leadership that it was a more of a big picture plan and it would take several years to implement. And I think they've made some progress. Fixing the O-line is one of their goals, and as you pointed out, with the offensive line players they have improved it somewhat for this upcoming year. Get some weapons for the quarterback. Well, Malik Neighbors is an excellent choice. He's probably, as you say, could have been deemed the best receiver in the draft, right up there with Marvin Harrison. They wound up getting him. Beef up the defense. They've done that, right? They have one of the best defensive lines in the league now, and that should help them out in low-scoring games, which that's how they're going to have to win, because I don't see their offense putting up many points unless Malik Neighbors comes out and really shows that he can hit the ground running here as a rookie, and Daniel Jones can find a way to get him the ball. Find some quarterback insurance. They did that. They brought in Drew Lock.
You sure that's insurance?
Yeah, well, I think Drew Lock is an upgrade over Tyrod Taylor, who couldn't stay healthy.
Interesting.
So, and I think
interesting.
They've told Drew Lock, they've hinted to him, he has a chance to start if he really shows what he can do. And the preseason, he may have a chance to knock Daniel Jones out there if Jones starts out very poorly, or if his knee is not fully recovered, although it seems to be. And they didn't re-sign Barkley. I think that was a huge mistake. And Belichick is out there waiting and watching. And I do think Daboll has a bad season. If you say, as you say, Daniel Jones plays poorly, the poor quarterback play generally costs head coaches their jobs, and that could be the situation here. We'll have to wait and see.
I think it's unfortunate because I do think, Brian Daboll already won a Coach of the Year. I think it's unfortunate that we take a look at this situation and it's bad contract, bad quarterback. You lose a bunch of key pieces, mainly your best offensive player in Saquon Barkley to your arch nemesis, the Philadelphia Eagles, and then you're expected to have great production from a team that can't produce well in offense. I genuinely believe with Daniel Jones at quarterback, I don't care who the weapons are. The offensive line, we'll have to wait and see. They did get a new offensive line coach, Carmen Bracillo. He was the previous Raiders offensive line coach, which the Raiders haven't had a great offensive line in a very, very long time. And then previously, the 2 seasons prior to that, was the Patriots offensive line coach, which they had an on and off good offensive line, bad offensive line, good offensive line, bad offensive line for a couple seasons now. The previous couple, not that great of an offensive line. So we'll see what Priscilla brings. So the offensive line, that's the massive question mark. If the offensive line is good, let's give it average. We won't give it 30th in the league. Let's double it. They have the 15th best offensive line. I think Daniel Jones could be okay. Okay, meaning 7-10, 8-9. I don't think the Giants are a playoff team.
No. I think if they go 8-9, Daboll may survive.
I think if they go 8-9, he may survive. But I still think Daniel Jones will not be the starter next year. I do think though Jones would be a pretty good backup. I think he's an upgrade over a Marcus Mariota.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a starter in the NFL though.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's just unfortunate because I like Daboll. Coach of the year. I still thought I called it.
He's a madman on the sidelines.
You can timestamp it on the show. I said after the Titans comeback the Giants had week 1 of last year.
Players fighting with each other on the
sidelines.
sidelines, arguing with the coaches. What kind of discipline is that? Is the madman demeanor on the sidelines? I think he has to fix that. He's going to be calling the plays this year. We'll see what happens there. If he can't control his emotions, they'll make some mistakes there. He did make some mistakes in games last year that cost him games.
Hold on. I think Mike Kafka, the OC. I think he's going to do a fine job. I think he's okay. I mean,
he's not calling the plays now.
I think
he's the OC. Don't you expect the OC to call plays?
Who knows? He might call plays. He might.
They say Daboll's going to call them.
They may alternate. There may be situations where, you know what, Kafka calls this game, Daboll calls that game. Yeah. Whoever maybe has the better scheme.
I don't dislike Daboll either, but I liked him the year they made the playoffs. He made some really gutsy calls the first game. He went for it. Went for 2 there and won the game by a point. I thought that was cool.
Well, I said after the game, you could fact check me on this. I said after the game against the Titans, the comeback game, I said Brian Daboll will win Coach of the Year. He won Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. The offensive line's the question mark. That's what affected Daniel Jones the most. I think he got sacked 10 or 11 times against the
quarterback
Seahawks last
is a question mark.
Quarterback has always been a question
Wide
mark.
receiver is a question mark. Will Malik Neighbors be all that he's hyped up to be?
I think he should be. Let's get to our final topic of today's show. So Dak Prescott, it looks like the Cowboys, the priority is to extend Dak Prescott basically very, very soon over instead of extending CeeDee Lamb, and they could wait a year for Micah Parsons. However, it comes out by Ian Rappaport saying that Dak Prescott is looking for a total whopping of $60 million per year, which is insane to think about. As well as on The Athletic, Cowboys beat reporter Saad Youssef actually answered a question from a reader who was questioning whether or not the Cowboys thought Dak Prescott was elite. And this is what he had to say. He said, quote, "I don't believe the Cowboys management thinks that Prescott is elite, as much as they indicated with their words. If they did already think he was an elite quarterback, Prescott wouldn't be entering the final year of his contract. As I've been saying, that's me now. Let's continue with the quote. Actions speak louder than words. I think management believes that Prescott is an elite leader and even an elite person. But if they thought he was an elite quarterback, he'd have a new contract extension completed a long time ago." So, if they're making Dak Prescott a priority to extend him over CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons, as well as Dak Prescott asking for $60 million a year, do you think the Cowboys would be making a mistake in making Dak their priority?
Before I get into that, I'd just like to outline some of the mistakes the Cowboys made with contract negotiations. Prescott, Lamb, and Parsons all needing to be re-signed in the same year. That's a mistake. They should have seen that coming and done at least one or maybe even 2 of them last year. They would have saved money. Now they should have staggered those contracts or renegotiated some of the deals last year. The market now has exploded for quarterbacks and receivers. The baseline salary now is $55 million. That's what Trevor Lawrence and the Bengals quarterback
Joe
Burrow have. And for elite wide receivers now, Justin Jefferson's getting $30 million a year. So that set the bar. And then they gave Dak Prescott a no trade, no tag, no franchise tag deal with his last contract. And he reportedly wants $60 million a year and can enter free agency next year because they can't trade him to a team he doesn't want to go to, and they can't franchise tag him. So they've got to make him their first priority because he's got the leverage over them. And will he get $60 million? It's smart to ask for it. Sure, why not ask for it? He'll be happy with 55.
55, I think is a little too much. Let's. I want to reread the quote by Saad Youssef. Actions speak louder than words.
That was what I
right,
said that before.
Right. But I'm reading from the quote, and I even said that when it comes to a particular quote that Dak Prescott himself said that we covered on the show. I'm only going to read the first part because that's the massive part of it. Read this quote. I don't play for money. Never have, never cared for it, to be honest with you. Would give it up just to play the game. And now Ian Rappaport is coming out saying that Dak Prescott's looking for $60 million a year.
He'll say it's his agents that are doing that.
Well, are the agents just plucking this number out of the sky?
Yeah.
If that's the case, I'll say it again like I said before. And for instance, let's compare him to another quarterback who deserved an okay contract that I don't think anyone really disagreed with. If you are really, I'll say this again, don't care about playing for the money, take you're clone in the NFL's contract, $45 million. Since Kirk arrived to the Minnesota Vikings, they are a 1-to-1 copy essentially. Take $45 million a year. If you really don't play for money, if that is the case, and they're already making you a priority, if the Cowboys offered you $45 million a year, take it.
Let's put those stats up there again.
Sure.
They're pretty close, except Kirk Cousins actually is a little ahead there. He's got 171
He has 14
TDs.
more touchdowns, 2 less picks.
Yeah.
And I'm going to agree with it. I don't think you should view Dak Prescott as an elite quarterback because elite quarterbacks are elite in a lot of situations, and especially the top-tier ones. When all the cards are pushed to the table and all the money is on the line, they succeed. Dak Prescott is the opposite of that. What have we seen in 3 straight playoff series? Failure, failure, failure. Embarrassment, embarrassment, embarrassment. Bad decision, bad decision, bad decision. So let's go through it real quick. So in 2021 against San Francisco, in the third quarter, Dak Prescott throws a pick 6 on his own 26-yard line. Debo scores on the very next play. Cowboys lose by 7. Let's go the next year. Brock Purdy's rookie year, undefeated, basically the entire season. Probably would have been if he didn't get hurt and tear his UCL against the Eagles. But up until that point, he was undefeated. So the Cowboys defense actually holds the 6th highest scoring offense that year to a total of 19 points. That's very good. The defense did its job. You can't argue that whatsoever. However, Dak Prescott, against the 49ers' 20th ranked passing defense, throws 2 very bad, very poorly thrown, very bad decision-making interceptions, and then the Cowboys lose by 7. Unfortunate. And then last year was bad. The first 7 seed in the NFL since it extended back in 2020, the first 7 seed to win a playoff game was the Green Bay Packers, and also the Green Bay Packers that year were the youngest team in the NFL. Anyone remember that game? Dak Prescott throws 2 very bad interceptions, one of which got returned for a pick 6 to put the score up 27-0, and the first offensive points came with 2 seconds remaining in the first half. The game was essentially over. The Packers kind of threw in the towel at that point. They still scored a couple nice points afterwards, but lo and behold, Dak Prescott, the numbers look great. I think he has like 403 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he also has the 2 picks. So 403 yards in essentially, in one game, but I think most of that came in the second half when, it's kind of the situation of the Packers just gave up in a sense. And also last year, Dak Prescott went 3-5 against teams with a winning record. And I talk about the offensive line. The offensive line is okay. Last year in 2022, not this past year, but the previous year, offensive line was ranked 12th. It's above average, just outside the top 10. Last year it was 8th. So they did have a top 10 offensive line last year. So if you have a top 10 offensive line last year, this past season, you have CeeDee Lamb, who clearly made himself look like a wide receiver 1, and Micah Parsons, who keeps getting better and better and better after every single season. Would you believe, and I can't believe this number is true. Let me get it out very quickly. Last year, Micah Parsons had 41 pressures against playoff teams. The next highest Cowboy had 17. Michael Parsons is a difference maker defensively. He's always been a runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. He's never been able to get it. He's always made a massive impact on defense. And CeeDee Lamb had a career year last year. And you're gonna give a guy $60 million for great regular season numbers, but when it matters most in the playoffs, he chokes. He becomes a bad decision-making quarterback. Normally, we consider those quarterbacks frauds, where you only do well in certain situations, and then when it matters most, when the lights are the brightest, you crumble underneath the pressure.
Well, I hear your points, and I think many of them are good. I don't think that Dak Prescott is a fraud. I mean, he was in the MVP talk there for right up till near the end of the season. He had some great games last year. He had his best season with the stats this past year. He really played well in the regular season. For whatever it is, the Cowboys just can't do well in the playoffs. That's not just Dak Prescott, although you pointed out some big mistakes that he made.
Interceptions.
Yeah, it's true. But look at the against Green Bay, the defense couldn't do anything. I mean, the Green Bay walked all over them. So it's a team sport. It's not just one player. I think that they will prioritize Dak in terms of contract because he has the leverage over them. But what about CeeDee Lamb? They thought he would be the first to sign, but he has less leverage. He doesn't have a franchise. He doesn't have a block against the franchise tag. So I think that he's been waiting for Justin Jefferson's contract to get done to set the benchmark. He should get very close to that, if not the same. I don't think he could hold out, but what good would it do him? It would just cost him money, and then the Cowboys can franchise tag him in 2025. So it doesn't make sense for him to hold out. I think he'll be in camp. I think they aren't, even though Prescott is looking for $60 million, and the Cowboys think that they may prioritize Dak, they aren't close with a deal with him, and that makes the timeline for CeeDee Lamb unknown right now, even though the benchmark has been set. So I'd say Lamb probably goes to the training camp unhappy because he doesn't have a lot of leverage. But I don't think it's a good thing for the Cowboys. I really think they made mistakes here. They should have done some of these contracts last year.
Well, I'll say this. Would you put CeeDee Lamb at the same level, so $35 million a year, same level as Justin Jefferson? Because I wouldn't. I would put him a notch or two below. So I'm talking probably $33, $34 million a year. I think he's better than A.J. Brown. I don't think he's as good as Justin Jefferson. So I would put him at the $33, $34 million a year. The big one, though, and this one you could wait, which is actually in the Cowboys' favor with Micah Parsons. You don't need to really worry about it until next year. That's where it gets interesting because a lot of people are expecting Micah Parsons to be the highest non-quarterback player in the NFL.
Paid.
Yeah. Which I think really he probably deserves it just because of the numbers. Let's quickly reference Micah Parsons over what he's been able to do so far in his career. Year 1, 13 sacks. Year 2, 13 and a half. Year 3, 14. So based on that metric, he should have 14 and a half sacks this year. He has 40 and a half sacks over 3 seasons. And he was runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year 1, runner-up Defensive Player of the Year 2, and he was the third Defensive Player of the Year candidate this past season. So Micah Parsons' impact is not small. It's pretty damn big. Like I said, against playoff teams in 2023, 2024, 41 pressures versus playoff teams. The next highest Cowboy had 17. You can't replace Parsons anytime soon. You can't replace CeeDee Lamb, I don't think, really anytime soon. You may have a couple nice B's and B minuses, but CeeDee Lamb is an A- type of guy, A- to an A. It's hard to replace him. And then Dak Prescott. You have a guy named Trey Lance, who I have no faith in, because I barely seen him. Didn't really perform very well when we did see him. So I think having him, and then he'll probably now surpass Cooper Rush at QB2. That's what a lot of people are saying. A lot of reports are saying. He's also going to take the majority of the preseason snaps as well. We'll probably see him every single game. I think there's a chance that the Cowboys really think about Trey Lance at some point in the near future. I don't think it's a great idea, but it might just be an idea that they bring up because Dak Prescott is asking to be the top paid quarterback in the NFL when he hasn't played like he deserves to be the top quarterback in the NFL.
He's willing to take a little discount there. He's not going to get.
Think?
He knows he's not going to get $60 million a year. He's
would,
asking that to hope to get 55.
I would hope he's not asking for 60 legitimately.
I'm sure he's asking for it. I bet this wasn't in the news, but I bet all the other quarterbacks, they asked for more than they ultimately got. They try to ask for the sky, and they get the piece of it that they want. That's what generally happens. I think that's the way the game is played. So I don't make too much of the $60 million number.
I do, because Dak Prescott held out last time. He was complaining about his contract, then he makes $40 million a year. The one thing that Jerry Jones has failed at consistently is waiting too long.
Yeah.
That's where you get bit. So, if the Cowboys, and it's really unfortunate that you have to do this, you would pay Micah Parsons next year when he's eligible for that extension. You would not wait until the year after or his 5th-year option year. You would sign him year 3. You would extend him year 3. Dak Prescott last year of his contract. CeeDee Lamb last year of his contract. And it bites you because the market every year goes up.
Yeah, and the quarterback and the wide receiver market exploded this year. The money is unbelievable.
Just
these
think,
guys
6 years ago.
$50 million to be a quarterback
6
in the
years
NFL.
ago, Jimmy G was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, making $25.7, I believe, $million annually. Jimmy Garoppolo was the highest paid quarterback in 2018.
Making
25 point something million dollars per year. And now we're talking about Trevor Lawrence, who...
These guys, the kind of money they have over their career. I think, Dak Prescott, he's already earned $162 million playing football.
I mean, was it?
I can understand
Kirk
why.
Cousins is going to be the wealthiest quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think he's making $400 million over his career.
Yeah. Wow. That's real money.
Of course it is. So, Dak Prescott asked for 60. I think, personally, doesn't deserve it. Doesn't deserve it. All right, that does wrap it up for today's show. We thank you so much for the constant support, and we thank you for watching as always. My name's Nathan Harvey. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We're your hosts of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Night, Grandpa.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a